What's up, everybody? We are back for a canceled week of OPD. So I'm going to have a special session here on self-evaluation and reflection. Um, so why divide this topic into two seemingly synonymous categories? For the purposes of our discussion, we're going to look at them as two parts of a whole. Self-evaluation as corporate, quantifiable, more based in statistics and hard data. Think our OPRs, awards, PRFs, establishing goals, measuring performance. Self reflection being a softer science, a study in the qualitative analysis of our feelings, perceptions, and actions. I recently rewatched Ford vs. Ferrari, and this great movie really gets you thinking about the paradigm of innovation versus bureaucracy, old versus new, image versus feeling, and how they translate into engineering. Much the same way we can view ourselves, determining how we have performed based on objective criteria, how we measure up to goals we wish to attain, and where we are in a reflective sense. Think two sides of a coin, the yin yang, sacred and profane, hard, soft, technical majors, fuzzy majors, or as Alan Watts would put it, prickles and goo. If you really want to get deep into these concepts, I'd recommend Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance by Robert Pirsig and its sequel Lila, where the protagonist attempts to rectify his concept of quality against two seemingly opposed virtues, being dynamic and static. Without getting too philosophical, I'm presenting these two approaches to give us options in evaluating and improving ourselves, getting at that concept of self-awareness. Neither approach is supreme, and either or a mix of both is valuable in making us better leaders and people. All right, here I'm dividing self-evaluation into two distinct categories for practical use: evaluation and assessment. Think back to UPT, or if you're in upgrade training now, or if you're an instructor. After every sortie, though instructional, you had a grade sheet, a write-up. This grade sheet was used as a tool to track performance and convey information. And while performance was compared against an objective criteria, the tool was used for growth, not so much evaluation. So it's a subtle difference, but it affects your mindset. For instance, if you view every training ride and grade sheet as an evaluation, you would increase your mental stress, which inhibits the learning experience. A check ride, an evaluation, is different, and the write-up, or Form 8, is a snapshot of performance. The evaluation is not necessarily for learning or growth, though it could be used that way, rather as documentation. Now that we're thoroughly confused, let's talk about how we would practically use an assessment and an evaluation. So an assessment could be used as a forward-looking tool to prepare you for tackling a goal. There's a job, an assignment, a school, or some other professional achievement you hope to reach. And by assessing your strengths, weaknesses, accomplishments, identifying obstacles, you can create a roadmap to that goal. A comparable tool we use in the Air Force is our feedback form, which is a little more whole person in scope, but can be used to kickstart this planning tool. An evaluation, as we've alluded to, is a look back, capturing past performance for documentation purposes. This is the easier of the two, but people tend to unknowingly blow it off. We do amazing things, but that is hard to convey without good data, as we've said in a previous OPD. So documenting throughout the year is key to really capturing scope and impact when it comes to writing an evaluation. Some tips I stole from the business world on how to assess ourselves and frame our goals. So one, establish a goal and know what the self-evaluation is used for. We can evaluate ourselves in many respects, physically, as parents, pilots, office workers. Before beginning your evaluation, determine the scope and what goals these ultimately lead to. A look-back evaluation, or an OPR, is self-explanatory. For a forward-looking assessment, you're taking a lay-of-the-land approach to pursue a goal. In this case, set your goal using the SMART acronym: specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely. Let's say your assessment relates to a goal of obtaining a test pilot school slot. Ideally, you would be aware of the entry requirements and career timing of this goal, as well as targets necessary to ensure success. As you assess your performance and qualities, you will proceed to measure your performance in relation to this path. 2, write out a list of accomplishments. What you've done over a given period of time for the OPR model, or what have you done to contribute to your goal. Your accomplishments don't always have to be directly tied to the goal, so long as they can be connected in some way. By this, I mean that things like personal and professional development, community involvement, etc., can be tied to even the most technical of fields and should not be overlooked. Writing out all your accomplishments gives you a lot of clay to work with when you're sculpting a well-rounded assessment. 3. Gather analytics. Data is important, but numbers don't tell a story. When you look at your accomplishments, also consider the scope and duration of impact. This is especially important for look-back evaluations like OPRs, as scope and duration of impact can create a hard-hitting narrative. Next, we have write out a list of obstacles. This is for your forward-looking assessments. Figure out what your LIMFACs are. This is critical in setting up those stepping stone goals towards your ultimate objective. If, for example, your two big barriers to test pilot school are time on station and attaining an instructor pilot qualification, you can now set your calendar to work against that time and refine your assessment to how best to attain your IP qual. Next, align your review with the organization's goals. For a look back, this is important because we all contribute to a specific mission and fulfill specific job duties. If in your assessment you determine that you did a whole bunch of things, none of which contributed to the organization, have you really done anything? For a look forward assessment, this can be tricky when your goals lie outside of your organization, but this can be done in parallel. In the TPS example, you could demonstrate your ability to lead, which is a universal trait, as well as innovate, constantly pursue technical mastery. In articulating your accomplishments, you don't need to be overly modest. Frame them in a way that aligns your values with yours and other organizations' values. Next, stay positive when describing challenges. When looking at LIMFACs, these don't need to be negatives, rather growth opportunities that you actively seek. A positive mindset in this regard keeps you looking forward and solution-focused rather than searching for excuses as to why you can't achieve your goal. Next, keep the focus on you. I don't mean this in a selfish way. Rather, this goes to what we've discussed regarding sphere of influence. Your framing of accomplishments and articulation of goals, as well as how you approach your limitations, should be in terms that you can address and take ownership of. You are the author of your fate and should embrace that role when mapping your route to success. Next, ask for growth opportunities. A step beyond limitations is to identify steps along the way that will help you reach your goal. If there's a school, a qualification, an assignment that will buttress and build your case towards a greater goal, seek that out and set it as a subordinate goal to strive for. Prioritize, don't just laundry list, and include feedback from others. This process should be deliberate and sober. It's not a visit to the mall Santa, so don't just write down a bunch of things you think you want to do. Have an end in mind, figure out the keys to get you there, and determine which are the most important, as this is where you will expend the capital of your time and effort. Seek out and take into account honest feedback from others. If the word on the street is that you're regularly unprepared or don't seem to study much, there's another goal for you to work for that can underpin your future endeavors. Lastly, communicate. Without communication, this is an exercise in a vacuum. Share your thoughts with your supervisor, the chief pilot, and the commander. Not only can they sanity check your work, but they can also pull levers to help you get you where you want to go. These individuals can help provide some self-awareness you may be blind to. Feedback is critical, and you need to have a healthy awareness of your level of performance, especially as it relates to your peer group. It's nice to have cheerleaders to urge you on, but it's better to have a coach to give you the lay of the land who won't BS you about prospects and will help ensure your pursuits are realistic and attainable. All right. This week and through the end of the month, we're honoring Muley 01, Lieutenant Colonel Paul Pollock. This session is a lead-in to his Friday reflection and look back on 2 years of command. By my count, I've worked directly for 16 different commanders, and this guy has done it the best. If you don't have other plans for the long weekend, please dial in for his look back. Seriously, Friday. Enjoy the family day if you have plans. This session won't be recorded, attendance will not be taken, no attribution. This is not one of the Air Force-y, optional but highly encouraged, but we'd like to see you there if you can be. He wants to spend some time with the O's and reflect. So if you don't have plans, come hang out. Bam, self-reflection. All right, we've covered self-evaluation, which is more focused on externalities. Reflection, on the other hand, is a more introspective look at ourselves. There's benefits of this type of reflection, including helping to build emotional awareness, gaining a better understanding of your emotions, strengths, weaknesses, driving factors, and for skill improvement. The ability to think back, observe ourselves in action, and to learn from it helps us, and better yet, help others. One day I'd like to get after the idea of empowering others by talking some Maslow and his thoughts on transcendence needs. Word of warning, there's a such thing as too much reflection. It could drive some neuroticism, including elevated stress, driving down satisfaction in jobs and relationships, promoting self-absorption, and feeling less in control of your life. Needless to say, it's not healthy to be in a constant state of analysis, but at sufficient intervals, especially before or after big life events, there's value in this practice. So there's a 3-step process to improve with self-reflection. Number 1, reflect on your experience. Think about what you did, thought, and felt at the time. This is more difficult than it sounds, as we're all spring-loaded to kind of cut to the chase and remember the events as they unfolded. A deeper level of understanding can be reached by thinking about your thought process, emotions, and really dig into the why behind them, why they occurred, and what drove your thoughts and actions. 2, reflect on your learning. Analyze your experience and compare it to the models or principles that you want to follow. When you understand the drivers behind your behavior, the thought process you follow, and where those thoughts, feelings, and assumptions come from, you can measure them against a standard. That standard should be a positive, who you want to be, or principles that are important to you. 3rd, apply to practice. We don't like to admit it, but sometimes we act contrary to our principles or straight up contradict ourselves. We're extremely complex and supremely fallible, which is okay. Knowing this, knowing how to improve, and putting it into practice helps us become who we want to be. Applying lessons learned is where wisdom comes from, and only those unwilling or unable to try are truly lost. So in a practical sense, how do we reflect? There's exercises out there, but a good place to start, I think, is by asking the right questions, tough questions that require complete honesty. Some examples are, who am I really? What worries me most about the future? Am I holding on to something I need to let go of? What matters most in my life? What am I doing about them? Why do I matter? What do I need to change about myself? How many of my friends would I trust with my life? What would I do? What do I want most out of life? When all is said and done, what will I have said more than I've done? And so on. Another approach is to write some things down using prompts or questions. Some examples would be, my favorite way to spend the day is. If I could talk to my teenage self, what would I say? The moments I'll never forget in my life are. List 30 things that make you smile. The words I'd like to live by are. I couldn't imagine living without. Make a list of the people in your life who genuinely support you and who you genuinely trust. I really wish others knew this about me. What do you love about life? Write about a time where your work felt real, necessary, and satisfying to you. Describe yourself using 10 words. I feel most energized when. Write a list of questions to which you urgently need answers. You get the idea. In trying to discover more about ourselves, we're improving and hopefully working to attain greater degrees of happiness and fulfillment. I've buried the lead here, but that's what this is really all about, happiness. Yes, I would love for you to be the best pilot, officer, and office worker in the world, but without a sense of contentment, happiness, there's no passion or drive. And then culture, morale, whatever you want to call it, fades, and we become mindless automatons. Discovering, embracing, and fostering what makes us happy, hopefully in alignment with our organization, our community, elevates our existence, and makes those things that society tells us should be mundane, like work, enjoyable. There's no homework because there's no OPD this week. This is all just for fun. So, no OPD Thursday. So, on Friday, enjoy your family day. Launch the boat, go grill, do whatever you're going to do. If you have the time, it's optional. Pop on into Zoom at 14:22 and listen to the reflections on command. A wrap up. So we talked about some types of self-evaluation, assessment, performance, how to take internal stock. I hope you found this helpful or at least thought-provoking. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you around. Later.